So, I wanted to talk a little bit about my childhood and some things that I've never shared on here before. Some unusual and strange things about myself that cannot be explained. They just can't be just drummed up to just coincidence and things like that. So, some of them I've shared, some of them I haven't, but there's a connection that I've had that I can't even begin to put into words. By the way, that's the red lamp right there. That red lamp, and then I have it's reflecting up onto the ceiling, but I cannot begin to put into words the connection that I had, this universal connection, and the feeling that I had as a child, even when I was just so little. I was 4, 5, 6. Especially when I was 5 or 6, I could vocalize it a little more, but not. It's just I thought it was normal. You know how when you're not aware that others don't experience what you do, the spirits, the ghosts, the spirits, the interdimensional, paranormal, supernatural. You just think everyone around you experienced it, especially as a child, and sometimes it would frighten me, and I would always put toys when I was 4 or 5 years old. I would put toys in a circle around me, or a half circle. I would take the toys, and Mama would wonder why. Like, why would I always encircle myself with these items? I would make sure there was no gap in the circle, and I would have to put the circle from one end of the hall, like around. I would sit in one end of the hall. I could play within that circle, and nothing was allowed to cross that circle, that half circle. And that's what I would do when I was 5, 6 years old. Actually, about 4.5 to 6. I would put these toys in a circle, a half circle around me, and like this, I would take it from here, and it would go like across there to the wall. That's an example. But then I would feel like that was a protection. Why I would do that, I don't know. And I would often see things and hear things that others were not capable of. I just heard something, but I would talk about things that others just shouldn't know. For example, there's no way that a 5-year-old would start talking about the universe and astronomy without prior knowledge. And something would say, turn to so and so in the encyclopedias, and I would want my parents, my family, I would want them to know. And I couldn't stand any negative energy. I couldn't stand any people around me that I just didn't. Yeah, that's just the way I was. And I would want my mama to see the fact that and my granny, that I had these World Book encyclopedias all around me, placed in the kitchen floor, placed around me in the floor, turned to various planets, the moon, Mars, Earth, Neptune, Uranus, stuff like that, and certain star systems, maybe the Pleiades or things like that, the Pleiades star system. And I was obsessed with the universe and the solar system, space, physics, astronomy, anything like that, or the unusual. And I would turn to these certain pages and just read extensively, or watch Nova as a child. I was obsessed with Nova on PBS. I was so obsessed with Nova and astronomy and space, and I would print these prophecies out and things from the library. I would go to the library, and I would look up. Finally, got to go, probably 5th grade, I think, and I would print things off, and I printed out the Mayan long count calendar information about astronomy, like the Helix Nebula, which is the logo for the channel, and weird information would come to me in 1st, 2nd, 3rd grade. I would write it down and didn't even know what I was writing. It would be in jumbled scribbles. And it was like sometimes it wasn't even in my handwriting. It's like something else was writing through me. Also, I would have these things where spirits, negative entities, they would take over me, and I would feel like I was leaving my body, and it was like I don't want to bring attention to it, so I'll just spell it, like POSSESSION. That's what it was like, and I did not like it, and I would fight it every single time, sometimes almost blacking out in front of the fridge because something else was overtaking me. These entities and negative energies would always try to, and actually when I tried to read biblical texts and things, it would make it worse. It didn't want me to. It's like it did not want me to. But we read some, and then I got a little better, trying to fight it off in the name of the Lord. And I had a strong connection, but at times weakened aura when it come to the negative influence that spirits could have upon me. And I would have scratches on my back that made the word hi, like hello. They would do these things to me. And Mama witnessed it, and she was like, oh my goodness. But I also spoke to Granny about things. My Granny, my Mama's mother. And my great-great-grandmother was Cherokee. She always said that out of all my grandchildren, she told my parents that's my only one about me. And I was like, oh, I didn't fathom that till later, what she stated. That was really sweet. That was kind. And I would always, even when she was kind of slipping, and I would always just sit in her lap, and it would come to her who I was, but she was forgetting people, but she remembered me, but she was coming in and out of her mind. Human mind, sort of like the Alzheimer's she was getting, and but she still remembered me. She would remember who I was, and I would sit and play with her hair, but she was definitely Cherokee, and we spoke about things, but specifically my Granny, my Mama's mama, I would talk to her about various things, and I talked about the beings that I've seen, that I was connected with at 5-6 years old. And I said, they vibrate at a higher level. And she said, well, what do you mean by they vibrate at a higher level? And I told my Granny. Now, mind you, think about this. 5 or 6 years old. I've never shared these stories. I've never shared all this, but she told me, she said, what do you mean they vibrate at a higher level? I said, well, their consciousness. They're a higher consciousness. And I said that when I said by vibrating at a higher level, they evolve quicker, these other beings. And I said, we're on a plane level down here in our dimension. And I said, well, how did I put it? I said, and these words, this stuff just came to me. When I was 5 or 6 years old, this stuff would just come to me as like, whether it be in dreams, or whether I just wake up with the knowledge, or whether I suddenly just had it would just come to me, or I just knew it. And I told her that they vibrate at a higher level. And I said, so thus they evolve quicker. Thus the higher conscious beings, closer to God, I said that they are much more advanced. Or the aliens that we see, the so-called aliens, which I'm not getting into the whole alien theory. I'm not getting into the whole thing of whether some say the fallen or demonic or whatever. I'm not doing all that for this video. I'm just talking about what I told my Granny when I was 5 or 6 years old. No one was teaching me this stuff. No one was feeding me this stuff. I just it was instilled. I just knew it. And I told her they vibrate at a higher level, thus they evolve quicker, and they are a lot higher consciousness than we are, and much more advanced. And I said for us, it would take hundreds of thousands of years to do. It only takes them a short period of time. For something it takes us a long time to accomplish, it would only take them a short period of time. And I said the higher or lower you go in certain plane levels of existence, not our time flow, but a higher dimension or a higher or lower dimension or higher or lower level, I told my Granny that time goes differently. And I said for us, it might have been a few hours. For something else, it would be months on a different level. Months of advancement. And that's what I was telling her at 5 or 6 years old. And then I talked about how, or Granny talked to me about how some of these crafts that we see are alive. She said some of them are alive. They don't all have just doors that just open up and, it's like they're actually alive. And Granny talked about that with me after I talked to her about, opened her up to her about what I knew. And Granny saw like a man in black, men in black. She saw people. She saw beings and spirits, interdimensional beings, ghosts and spirits all the time. That was a regular for her, and me as well. Well, when I was a young child, we were out on the playground, and it was about to rain, and those, I don't know what they're called, but those, they're these shelter things. They have a canvas over the top of them like a roof, and they sometimes would let children climb the stairs or the steps and get up into them and sit down and play like at a park or whatever, but this was in our playground. And I was in, third grade. It was first or third because I had the same teacher for both, if you want to call her a teacher. She was not she was not nice to me at all. All of them picked me out, except for two of them I remember, 2 or 3. They picked me out to basically bully myself. But, back to this, the little girl said, "Come on up here." And I was like, okay. So I went up there, away from the class, and I was just talking to her. And she started talking to me about, she said, "You're different, aren't you? About not being from here, and my spirit not being from here, and others don't understand you, do they? You have a hard time fitting in with others. You're not like other people. You see things and hear things, don't you?" And I was just like, yeah, I do. And then we just got to talking, and then she said, "It'll be okay. It'll all be okay someday. It'll work out. Things will work out for you." And she talked for like probably 15 minutes. I've shared this on here before, but she talked for a long time. We got down to talking for about, I'd say 10 or 15 minutes. And then suddenly it started raining. They said, "Everyone get back to class." She said, the teacher said, "Come on, let's line up." And she said, "Well, you better go back." And to this day, I never thought about it until years ago. And to this day, it's almost like the memory just popped back into my mind. She told me, go on back to class. You better follow them." And I thought, all this time, why didn't she go back? She wasn't a part of the class. She was just up there, wanted to talk to me alone up there. And I've had children do that randomly, and they'll say they didn't like hanging out with children their own age, that we're not like other people. And then they say, "Well, go on back." I've had that happen a few other times, but this occasion sticks to my mind forever. And she spoke, and she just talked so intelligently like an adult. And then she told me, "Well, I guess it's time for you to go back." And if she were one of the class mates or school students, she would have gone back with them. But she didn't. She stayed up there in that area, that lookout area. And I also talked to the librarian, which there's a strange shift situation there. Got a magazine with my coon cat who passed away. My cat had passed away. And he was a beautiful cat. He's very spiritually connected and connected to Native American Indians. I know that sounds crazy to some, but I saw their spirits around him. I even have pictures from where he was. But I remember talking to the librarian. And I told her, "That's where I'm from." Which I know this sounds insane to some, but that's what I told the librarian. But that magazine that I'm talking about with the cat on it, our cat, it had our cat on it, the type of cat he was. Looked just like him. He passed away. December 2011. I got that magazine, and the issue was December 2008, which is 3 years before he passed, is when it released. When did I get it? 5th grade, 2005. December 2005. Which is 3 years before he passed. Which is 3 years before the magazine released. I got the magazine 3 years before it released, and he dies 3 years after it actually released in the world around us, to the date of the magazine. Another thing, I told my librarian, I said, that's where I'm from. And then I pointed up at this book, and later I pointed up at this book, and she said, what makes you want that book? And I said, I don't know, I just do. She said, that's a little advanced for you. It was something to do with a spiritually gifted boy that was from out there, and he had to defeat these, I don't know, something about these dragons and reptilians, and his principles mean to him and stuff like that. And he was a spiritually gifted boy in the book. But I used to get space books out and stay in the other side of the library. And I sat to myself, and I said, that's where I'm from. Now imagine the thought of the librarian's face, the thought in her mind, and look on her face when I said that. And she said, okay, I'll let you just keep reading, but you can't do this forever. I'll let you keep looking at space magazines. And then she even said, later they said, you're not like other children, are you? One of my teachers said that. I'll never forget her name, either of them. And then I get a book. When I had my appendix surgery, I got a book. I've never shared this at all on here. I got a book. It was written by the author that had my name on it. And it was from a teacher that I really liked. When I was in the hospital with my appendix surgery, she visited me. And she said, I didn't even know. She said, I didn't even tell the author. I didn't tell the librarian, the seller of the books. I didn't tell him. She said, I didn't even tell him the name of this boy. I didn't even tell him your name of me. And she said, he just handed me this book, and it had the same name as the person I was giving it to. It was me. And once again, about a gifted boy that had to lead a bunch of people. It's just crazy. But I've always been, when I was a child, I seen things on a molecular level that no one else could. The particles of water. I look into space and I could see things and examine things. I could even see planets and stars, and I could see things, craters in some of the celestial objects. I could see things in detail that no one else could. Especially on 10/21/06, that date that popped in my head, everything in the skies were large that day. We all saw that. But I could see the craters on things, and then the next day everything's back to normal. But I used to be able to see things in detail in the sky and in existence in general. So this is a personal story. The device is dying. I'll have to get back later, and I'll have to continue this. Peace. Signing out. This is documentation and personal stories.